Hello and welcome to Founders Amplified, where we spotlight underrepresented founders who are driving innovation and impact across various industries and sectors across the globe. I'm your host, Narayan Kulkarni, and I'm excited to be here with you today. Today's guest is Emily Gerhardstein. Emily Gerhardstein is the CEO and co-founder of Ellis Adaptive, which was inspired by her father's experience with aphasia, another form of dementia. Ellis Adaptive is redefining adaptive apparel with Hana fasteners, patent-pending magnetic technology designed for one-handed use and universal wear. Ellis Adaptive combines thoughtful, timeless design with comfort and style to empower people every day. Emily and the Ellis Adaptive team invite you to join the movement in advancing accessibility and inclusivity, as they believe that together we can make a difference. So, now that you know a little bit more about Emily, let's dive in to the conversation. Welcome to Founders Amplified, Emily. It's so great to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Hi, Narayan. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. Again, thanks so much for being here. I know we've had a number of conversations leading up to this point. I know you've had quite the journey up to here, and it's amazing to be here with you today. And so let's get started. To kick things off, I would love to hear more about that journey you've been on. So could you tell me and our audience what led you to become a founder, and if there are any particular experiences or moments that sparked that decision?
So my background is in merchandising, design, product development. So I know how to ideate, create, and then launch a hard product. And I've worked in every vertical in retail. And so I think this has really come up to a full circle moment. So I left my role at a high growth startup last year. And I started to really think about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to show up in the world. And I know I can sell product. I'm really good at designing and creating, but I wanted to have a bigger impact. And so last year, my dad has aphasia, so it's another form of dementia. And my mom has severe osteoporosis. So about 2 years ago, she shrank 6 inches in just 6 months. So now she used to be 5'10. Now she's 5'4". She's shorter than me now. And so she had her second TIA, so a mini stroke last summer. And that really made me pause and really just think about life. And I wanted to be there for them and support them. So I decided to take some time off. And from last summer to last December, I was caregiving for them. And during that journey, I was helping my dad in the bathroom and doing that mental and physical assessment and realized that he could do everything, navigate the zipper on the fly. He tucked in his shirt, but he couldn't do that tricky top of your pants. And so when I realized, and during this time, I saw the full wheel of emotion of the frustration, the anger, and then the shame and embarrassment and just giving up. And for me, that was heartbreaking. And I knew that I couldn't fix this crappy disease, but I could fix this. So it kind of has gone through this full circle moment of all of the products I've developed, my journey in the startup world, and I'm fully embracing it. And so that's kind of how I started and where I am today.
Wow, thanks so much for sharing. I find it to be beautiful to see how it sounds like you've had very deep experience and expertise in retail, but then understanding the aspect of wanting to make an impact, and then for like a very personal reasons and caregiving for your family, seeing firsthand the problem yourself, but also more importantly how it impacts your loved ones. I find it very beautiful how like that contributed to and was a driving force behind your venture. So thanks so much for sharing like those moments and that experience and how your expertise played into that. The next thing I'd love to know a little bit more about is, can you tell me and our audience what are some aspects in more depth about your identity or your story that you feel give you a unique perspective as a founder?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm minority, so I'm Asian woman, being a founder, and we know that 2% of VCs only go to women. So um it's hard, and we're trying to break down that barrier. So I've always been different. I'm adopted, so I was born in Korea and I came to the States when I was about 2. And I was brought up in white suburbia in Detroit. And so I was always different. And I not only did I look different, but I also thought differently. So I was always kind of a little bit of an outcast. I got bullied and picked on. And so, you know, that kind of has shaped who I am of just trying to be as authentic as I can be. And that's kind of led me to where I am and then especially as I started to be more into this adaptive and learning about people who have different kinds of disabilities, there's this beautiful connection, and I try to make sure that they feel safe and supported as I talk to them. So I try to do that not only when I speak to people one on one, but also I think about it as the brand and the company.
Wow, well said. Well, something you shared which really resonates. So, as the audience probably knows, I talked about this in episode 0. I'm an Indian American. I'm 1.5 Gen. So I also grew up in with someone who had a very different thinking style. I was bullied by other people, but all for due to the color of my skin, and so I strongly resonate with the facet of going ahead and having a strong empathy, it sounds like, for understanding how it feels to be left out and excluded, and then that like providing the emotional capacity and resonance to then really want to support other people. The other thing which our audience may or may not know is the model minority myth is very strong for Asian Americans. So the model minority myth is a perspective that basically because Asian Americans, or it started with Japanese Americans, but then effectively all Asian Americans, they're expected to be at a really high standard, and that it can be really, really challenging for people. And but on top of that, for Asian and Asian American women in particular, it's a really big thing. I mean, I've seen that with like a lot of friends I've had in undergrad with individuals. And this is important because you pointed out the aspect of, and it's a really unfortunate statistic that less than or just about 2% of VC funding goes to female founders worldwide, depending on who the statistic is, it varies, but that's even less for women of color. And so I really appreciate that like you bring this up and you share these aspects of identity because that provides a really stark reality of a challenge. But on the flip side, and one thing I appreciate about what you've alluded to just now is that provides a deep empathy, which can provide great strength into how you connect with and resonate with customers when product market fit and really developing something that is impactful. So thank you very much for sharing your perspective on that. So the next thing I'd like to ask you about is a little bit more about LS Adaptive. So I'm, as you probably are aware, since you've been so deeply involved in retail and the adaptive space, there are a number of different adaptive solutions. The adaptive market is growing, but LS Adaptive, I'm sure, is really unique. So can you tell me and our audience what's something unique about LS Adaptive that would make people turn heads or just rethink about like the adaptive space or adaptive clothing in a new way?
Yeah. So I think what started this journey was when I was looking for adaptive products for my dad. And so I did my research and I realized that first, that top button has not been touched in over 150 years. And that fastener, so buttons, zipper, snaps, have seen very little innovation in the past century. And we are seeing an insurgence and more awareness about adaptive, which is amazing. Tommy Hilfiger created the first mass market adaptive clothing line in 2016, but that was less than 10 years ago, right? And so what we're doing is we're getting to the root of it. Um, and I realized it was the fasteners themselves. So we are magnetic technology. And so our products is the lightest, strongest, and smallest in the market. Everything that we create and develop can be used with one hand. We're a universal wear, so right and left hand wearers can use our products. We're designing all this with my dad as being the guiding light, right? So with his aphasia, he remembers muscle memory. So it's really important when we're designing products that it's really easy to use. It's intuitive. So that's really what we're building at LS Adaptive is really making our products a little smarter, more intuitive, really making sure that you're saving that time, you're conserving that energy so you can do the things that you really want to do. Because I don't look at dressing as a task. It sucks, and you know, I've dressed my dad multiple times and it might take him over an hour. I'm hot and sweaty. He's hot and sweaty, and now he's angry. And that's the whole day. And I think that we can do better. And that's what we're hoping to do.
Well said. There's three things you shared, which I want to really emphasize, and that really resonated. The first one was the word intuitive. I appreciate that you use the word intuitive. As the audience knows, I talked about this before. I'm an intuitive person. I think when one wants to create a product and get product market fit, it has to, of course, to VCs and to funders, you got to be able to show the numbers. But to users, it has to be intuitive to them. It has to be a no-brainer for them to be able to use it and for it to solve a pain point. The second thing which you mentioned, which I really appreciate, was you talked about magnetic technology. You talked about different facets of like what goes behind the product. And this is important because I mean, you know this really well as someone who's in the retail space. People who are in the retail space know this, but like some people may not know, like small details like this matter. Being able to communicate them really matters. They might be like one small piece here, like one like sand particle here, one sand particle there. It might seem like that, but no, they really matter, and they can make a world of difference to people. And being able to not only have those, patent those, have the IP, but articulate those in a compelling, amazing narrative like you did is amazing. The third thing is the meta point you made about adaptive, but more so disability tech. So I think that a lot of people strongly underestimate the need, the need for disability tech solutions that support people of various abilities of all kinds, whether people are neurodivergent, have physical disabilities, etc. But the other thing, and you mentioned this as well, disability tech has been a big innovation that has touched many other sectors. Sadly, in the case of Hilfiger's line only came like 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. But like it has been like thinking about wheelchairs, ramps, etc. That has ripple effects for many different parts of society. So I
Right.
think, and I applaud or respect people who are working in this space because like you are in the same way that like deep tech is having a foundation for things like the same way that femtech is, of course, a tech solution, but also climate tech is also similarly like societal innovation, like environmental innovation. Disability tech is also a fundamental cross-cutting innovation in many different areas. So those are three things which you shared, which I really appreciate that you mentioned, and in how you are doing justice to those in what you're doing with Else Adaptive. So thank you for that. Another thing
Yeah.
I would like to learn a little bit more about is, can you tell me more about the impacts that you see envision with people using your product? Like say, like in 5 or 10 years, if you say have the sales, if you have people using your product, they really like it. What are both, not just the revenue or like the number impact, but like the social impacts, the broader societal impacts of
Yeah.
what would happen?
So I love what you brought up just a moment ago, talking about disabilities and the disability tech, because at the end of the day, this all helps the greater world, right? We know that sidewalks have ramps because people with wheelchairs, right? There's a lot of beautiful inventions that help just everyone. It benefits us all, right? Parks and benches and parks and museums so people can sit and rest. And so that's kind of how I envision LS Adaptive too. So we are here to be ease of use. So yes, we are targeting people we're focused on limited dexterity, so hand and finger strength, and also people with disabilities. But in the end of the day, we know that it's going to just eliminate some of those extra steps. And this is going to be used for the general public. This is going to be something that, I can see a university student, wanting to throw on a button-down shirt in a snap, right? So these are all just ease of use, designs and developments that we're creating. But in the end, it's going to be enjoyed for all.
Well said. Could you elaborate a little bit more on this one? Because I absolutely love the point that you're making that, like, yes, ease of use so to the point that you described for your father, for example, it obviously relieves a significant burden for him. It also relieves the burden for you and others to be caregiving for that person. But what about the average other person? So could you talk a little bit more about like how LS Adaptive and its technologies benefit each of those three different stakeholders? The
Yeah.
person, for example, who has a disability would need that, the caregiver, and also just the general person.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone with let's say limited dexterity, like my father, right? So he has, he doesn't have the fine motor skills. So he struggles with doing that button, that loop, right? So this would just eliminate that. So because of our magnetic technology, it just snaps right in together. And so that eliminates doing the zipper, right? And so this is something that, for example, for kids, or for the average adult too. So um, all these I can see can really help and improve and just making things, because I never thought about jeans, right? That top button, because it's something that I've been blessed to have both hands, right? And it's something I never thought about, that would have been such a tricky thing, but you touched your pants at least 7 times a day. You're changing, you're using the bathroom, you're showering, and it's something that we all kind of take for granted unless when it's not. And so I think that's really important. It's like these everyday things that how can we just make it a little bit easier? And so you don't really have to think about it. You're just kind of like, boop, done, and you're out the door. And so it's really making dressing easier.
Cool. And what about for caregivers? And what
Oh
about
yes, for
for
caregivers.
people who are just generally
Yes.
like not using or have like the experience of being someone who's been affected or a caregiver? What about
Yeah.
those two
So
groups?
absolutely. So, because we've had questions where people are like, well, we use assisted dressing. And I'm like, this is exactly for assisted dressing too, because I'm a caregiver for my dad, right? So I know how important it is just to get him together and help him dress. Just that little extra push and nudge, right? We all need a little bit of support sometimes. And so with assisted dressing, this would also help because it's going to help the caregivers, that ease of use. So I think about the spoon theory, and it's about, let's say you have about 10 spoons for the day. And you want to be really, especially when you have a disability, you want to be smart on where you put your effort and where you put your energy. And I think about that a lot when I think about the caregivers as well as the caregivee. We're trying to conserve energy on of both of them, right? So we can absolutely help and assist with assisted dressing. Something that I got from my dad was, because I'm always chasing him around with a pair of shoes or slippers, and sometimes it takes about a half an hour to get them on, or else sometimes he just doesn't wear shoes, and that's just what it is. And I got him these easy slide-ons for his shoes, and in 5 seconds it was done, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. So it really does help, and it's going to help others, and not only for you to be a self-dressing, but also for assisted. And I look at that as, I actually got a pair of those. They're actually Skechers, and I bought them for myself too because they're easy, slide on, slide off. And so that's an example of bringing this to the mass market too, something that is just easy to use, right? And that's really what we're focused on.
Well said. Two things I appreciated was, of course, their deep emotional benefits to the person who's using it, but also, yeah, to the caregiver that like removes time, stress, which can be used for other activities. And yeah, like to your point as well, like just yeah, time savings in today's world, even with AI and even with the advent of like advanced technologies, that also frees up space for consciousness and just more rich and more like abundant living. So in that way, I mean, I just applaud you and people like more broadly people who are in the space. We think about like yes, their ease of use, and also and meta point I want to make to our audience, ease of use technologies. They're very powerful ways in order to free up mental, emotional, etc. capacity, which then leads to an ability to live more abundantly in oneself, but also to contribute abundance to others. Not just, of course, financially, but like in terms of like emotions, relationships, etc. So I you implied also stated some aspects of those, so I wanted to call out and appreciate you for making that point.
Yeah, there's
The
a lot
other
of things.
thing,
Yeah.
sorry, you're saying.
No, I was like, there's so many things I would rather do with my dad. Like I want to sing with him. I want to go outside with him. And this is all supposed to help conserve that energy so people can do the things that they want to do.
Right. Well said. So it sounds like so the next thing I'm curious about. So it sounds like you've had quite the journey to get to this point, both in terms of like being a caregiver, understanding the problem, but also in developing LS Adaptive. So this is a two-part question. What's one thing you learned about business building that you wish you had known prior to starting? And what's one thing you've learned about like the disability space, disability tech space, or adaptive space that you wish you had known that you know now, which you wish you known prior to starting?
Yeah, so in the disability space, I found it really interesting when I thought we our initial target was people with limited dexterity. But as I started to have my one-on-ones with people who are amputees and wheelchair assist, none of them use adaptive clothing. And I found
Hmm.
that extremely interesting, but also a little sad, right? Because this is meant for them. And I see a problem that they're not using this, right? I mean, they're buying cheap jeans that will last only a couple months and will cut off a leg, right? And make it and work, and I think that we can do better. So I mean, there is that aspect of what I've learned where I thought that, oh, people who already who are in the disabilities will already have a good solution, but I found that there hasn't been a great solution. So let's try to make those solutions for them. Um, as in building, as we're a bootstrapping startup. And so I was like, okay, I got to do everything all at once. And you can quickly get overwhelmed. And, when I was building and getting the foundational work done, and then I was like, okay, I need to do these pitch competitions. I need to apply for these grants. And it was just getting too much. And so I actually paused. I paused on grants, I paused on pitch competitions because I realized that it is a whole nother job. It's on its own. And so for us at Alice Adaptive, we decided to do what we do best, and it's building and creating the clothes. And so we're like, okay, we started this in early January. So to be in consumer goods and be able to bring a product in less than a year, it's really the timing is really interesting, right? Because we're
Hmm.
able to do this in such a quick amount of time, have patents, and also a hard product. And so that is something I've learned of like, okay, you have to break it up. So I wish I learned that a little earlier, so I didn't spend so much time writing all those grants and applying for these pitch competitions because they take a lot of time.
Well said. I appreciate. I'm receiving the point of intention as well as like really like both in terms of like care for others and understanding like a user's perspective, but also like using one's time wisely. And I appreciate you made those points because I've heard a lot of people say the founders' most precious resources are their time and their energy. So thanks for
100%.
sharing. Now, as we wind down a few more rapid fire questions, how can people find you and how can they support your work?
Yeah, so we are on social media. So follow us on Instagram for Alice Adaptive. We also have a Facebook community, so Alice Adaptive Community, and also on our website, so aliceadaptive.com.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Emily. And to our audience, you can find Emily's information as she shared in the show notes. Now it's time for our signature question. Can you please fill in the blank? I amplify.
I amplify, fill in the blank. I amplify, ooh, I'm a minority amplifying minorities.
Wow. Well said. That's profound. I mean, you've talked about, for example, being an adoptee, a woman founder, but also like someone who is like a caregiver, et cetera. So I received that in multiple different senses. So thank you so much For sure. And also like supporting your parents, for example. So thank you so much for sharing your profound response. And again, thank you so much, Emily, for being here with us on this episode. It was so amazing to just connect with you again, hear more about your journey and your insights and what you've been building with Ellis Adaptive, how it's innovative, and the impact that's going to promise in our world. And I just want to take a step back and reflect on this conversation and just share with you some things that really resonated with me. I know, like, to our audience, this has, of course, been a rich conversation. Like, Emily's a fantastic person. You've probably heard a lot of cool stuff, but I just want to share a few things that really resonate with me. So first of all, it's amazing how you have taken really deep experiences you've shared in all the different verticals of retail, and then pair that with empathy to then create something that was technically excellent. But then layering upon that, your personal experiences, which sounds like have been very challenging, but also very deeply touching, to support a family that really helped you as an adoptee. And then also like going ahead and in that way, developing a strong empathy and relationship. So I love to see both a high level of the technical knowledge and also relationship. The second thing which I really appreciate is you talked about this earlier, and I mentioned this, the aspect of intention. I think that like you talked about intention, both the aspect of, I received the aspect of the time management, but also the aspect of going ahead and being intentional with empathy, really understanding users. And I've seen in many different ways, you always keep the user first. You always keep what you can do as Adaptive to help the user first. And I see that thread of continuity, which I think is really amazing and fantastic. The third thing, which I want to really call it to the audience, and which I received was, you talked about this several different times, is your intuition, your understanding of the disability tech space and how Ellis Adaptive fits, both from the perspective of like addressing certain parts like the top button you talked about, but also like seeing how ease of use, it is something that can like touch in many different perspectives. I just appreciate the succinctness and the elegance with which you communicated that insight, and I'm very grateful for that. And also more broadly, I just want to appreciate and honor you as an underrepresented founder, a female founder, an adoptee, someone who's building into disability tech. And thank you so much for what you're doing for our world and for the founders who are listening and for the audience who is listening. So thank you again, Emily, for being here.
Thank you, Narayan. I'm so happy to be here. So thank you.
You're most welcome. So again, I'm sure we'll have many other conversations, and I look forward to staying in touch. But as our episode's concluded, I'd like to say bye for now, Emily.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye.
To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Founders Amplified. I hope you're feeling as inspired as I am. If you'd like to learn more about our guest and support them, check out the show notes for their details. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a rating, share it with someone you know, and follow us for more inspiring episodes like this one. If you're a founder who is driving innovation and impact in any industry or sector anywhere in the world and would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Check out the show notes for more information. And finally, remember that you, yes, you, have the power to amplify the voices around you. Whether you're a colleague, family member, friend, funder, mentor, or just another fellow human, your support matters. So I invite you to celebrate and uplift the underrepresented innovators in your life who are driving innovation and impact. Let's create a better future for everyone, together. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep amplifying.